Welcome, viewers. Wonderful to have you with us again for our next show of Catholic Viewpoint, Faith, Hope, and Love. Today I'm excited to be able to have a conversation with someone who I think you'll all know, many of you will know anyway for sure, because this lady has been around for doing charitable work and many other beautiful things in the life of the church for many years.
Welcome to Catholic Viewpoint, Faith, Hope, and Love, exploring how to live life to its fullest in God's wonderful love for all people. In the holiness, goodness, and peace of God, we are enabled also to love one another. Let's join our host, Father Michael Kiernan.
So viewers, as promised, we're going to introduce you to a wonderful person who is going to share with us some thoughts today. This is Beth White, and welcome, Beth, to our show today.
Thank you.
Always a joy to see you, as I've known you for many years, and seen you and doing all sorts of good work for the Lord and the church. So welcome, and can you tell us a little bit about yourself? You got that young mother of yours who was 100 and what?
101.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I was born in Denver, Colorado. My dad was stationed at Lowry Air Force Base there. And I was born on a very snowy day in October. The weather in Denver was very unpredictable. Almost didn't make it to the hospital, but the doctor thought he had done some heroic work, and his name was Paul, so he told my parents that he thought I should be named Paula. But instead they gave me the name of my mom's sister, who had died as a young teenager of meningitis in rural North Dakota. So I'm happy to have that name and not be called Paula.
So you go by Beth, but your full name is?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Ann, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was that after Elizabeth Ann Seton, or was it just because of this other family relative?
Yeah, just because of the relative. I'm not sure I was named for a particular saint, but I'm happy to have lots of St. Elizabeths to call my patrons.
Well, in many ways you're a saint yourself, so we thank God for that, with all the ministry and service you do for the church in Sacramento and other places as well. But you traveled around a lot then, in the Air Force?
Yeah, my dad was in the Air Force, so my brother next in line was born in Dayton, Ohio, and my sister next in line was born in Tucson, Arizona. And then we landed in California when he went off active duty and stayed on the reserves. So we landed in California, and I've lived in California ever since then.
And one of your sisters, I think, was somehow connected in high school with Bishop Soto?
She was. She went to Mater Dei High School in Orange County.
Yeah.
And Bishop Soto was, I believe, younger than she is. So, but we got out her yearbook one time and looked, and there he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. So traveling around, I work myself with the Air Force at Beale, and so I see people coming and going, PCSing, deploying, PDYs, all the different ways in which people serve. So you must have been in a lot of states then.
In a lot of states, and my dad was in the Strategic Air Command, so he traveled to many places, but never told us where, could never tell us because it was always classified. So my mom never knew where he was from time to time, but came back here and there, and yeah.
Well, she didn't have to worry where he was from the point of view of, apart from the dangers of his job, because he was a most delightful, loyal man. And I know your mom was strong Catholic from the get-go, but he wasn't. But tell us about how, I'm almost delighted by the story you've told me one time about him going to church with her, long before he...
Yeah. Yeah, that was the story. They were married on an Air Force base, and he came from a Baptist family, so and they left it to him to decide when to be baptized himself, and he just didn't until later in his life. But he always supported us. We went to Catholic school, and he always supported us, and he went to church with us on Christmas and Easter, and sometimes Mother's Day. And now I'm looking back, I'm thinking that might have depended on what was going on at the time. But we always sat in the back row then, so we could leave the minute it was over. So, but he always was supportive of us being Catholic, and we were all, I tell people I was born Catholic, and he was always supportive of that.
Oh, well, I met him a number of times, and delightful man, and I think God somehow maybe got things a little inversed, because I think he was supposed to live over 100, and your mother was supposed to go early, and he went early, and your mother was still here.
He wanted to live to be 100 in the worst way. So on his 90th birthday, he announced that our next gathering would be on his 100th birthday, but he didn't make it. He lived to 91, and Mom never wanted to live to be 100, and she's now 101. So
God has a sense of humor, maybe.
God has a sense of humor. If you want to hear God laugh, you tell him your plans.
That's a good one, yeah.
Yeah.
So then you had your wonderful life with those parents, and a great example of marriage that we're seeing there, and your dad. Then he eventually did get into baptized and so on. And
Yeah.
I remember when he passed away, that was a difficult time for you, of course.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's been almost 10 years now, so hard to believe.
so the 100th would be coming up pretty soon.
The 100th would be coming up soon.
Well, maybe you should celebrate it anyway, some way, and at least.
No, don't tell my sister. We'll have to have a party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they can celebrate it in heaven and so on.
Yeah.
And so on. So then you yourself got out in your life, and I know you read voraciously, and you were in the library field or whatever.
Yeah, I actually got my bachelor's degree in Spanish, and then went on to get my master's in library science, and that was my plan, to be in that field the rest of my life. And but things happen, and had my kids, and then when I needed to go back to work, library jobs were non-existent, so I ended up in church work, and it's been 32 years now. So I guess I used to say church work was my second career by default, but I have a feeling I should be saying the other way around.
Well, it was God's providence, and it was a wonderful thing, because I know you've enriched the lives of so many people.
Yeah.
And so you have your son who joined the military, and then you have your delightful daughter, Joanna, who is in museum work or whatever.
Yeah, she lives in New York, and she's a photographer, so she works in museums in New York.
Well, that's great, yeah.
Good place to visit.
And do you get over there to see her pretty regularly?
Yeah,
or?
once in a while. Not often enough, but now and again.
Yeah. Well, you have to make time for that more and more, and she is a delightful young woman, and I always enjoy seeing her when she's out this side, because I knew her when she was in school, of course, both of your kids in school and so on. So then you get into the church, and one thing led to another, and you were in youth ministry, and you were in Hispanic ministry.
As you know, I started in youth ministry, but as you know, in the church, when you can do something good, all of a sudden it becomes your job. So I ended up with a lot of jobs, a lot of ministries, and that was great, because I got to see the church from start to finish, and turned out to be good. Yeah,
you traveled the world in some sense. Well, of course, you had gone to, I think you told me one time you did the Camino?
I didn't do the Camino. I spent a year in Spain when I was in college, and I did travel the cities of the Camino, but it wasn't a big deal at the time. I didn't know that it was a pilgrimage at the time. So, but I went to the places and the churches there, and
Because it is a huge thing today, and many people get enormous benefits from doing it. Is that because of just doing something difficult, or is it the time being alone, or what do you think is the attraction of the Camino?
I think it's supposed to be a spiritual experience.
Pilgrimage type thing.
Yeah, a pilgrimage from one place to the other, and along the way you do a lot of reflection, and you generally pilgrims travel by themselves, so it's a chance to reflect on their lives and where they're going, and as they travel along.
So in your youth ministry work, then you spent a lot of time, obviously, but I think you were in Denver for the big one. Johnny Hall was here, and other parts around the world, Rome maybe.
I did 2 World Youth Days. The first one in Denver. It was interesting to go back that way. And then in the year 2000, it was in Rome, and took young people there. Yeah.
And that must have been quite an experience, being 2000, and of course keeping
It was
those
quite
kids
an
straight.
experience. Traveling with teenagers is an interesting experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that one we actually did a little traveling before we got to Rome. We went to Lourdes, and we went to Siena and Assisi, and then ended up in Rome for the big week there. Yeah.
So one thing led to another, and you got into charity work and working for Bishop Soto in the Diocese of Sacramento for quite a long time, I guess.
Yeah, I think it was 12 or 13 years.
Yeah.
Working
and
there.
that was charity in the sense of taking care of the poor on the street, as it were, but also I think it was a lot of immigration work and migrancy work. And
yeah,
how was that?
Yeah, it was, we did refugee resettlement, which was an interesting thing to do over the years. We saw people from all different countries, including the big resettlement of the Hmong refugees from Laos. And there were people from Africa, people from the Ukraine, people from the Middle East, and it was really interesting to be able to help people get out of really bad situations that they found themselves in, and people looking for a better way of life. So it was good work.
Well, that was a beautiful thing to do. And you had a good heart for that, I know, and I'm sure it's a great concern for you, all that's happening around the world today with immigration and the challenges in our own society here. And
yeah, because people are just looking for a better life for themselves and their children, and wherever they can find it. And I think we don't often understand the dangers that people live in and what makes people leave the place where I can't imagine having to leave here and go to another country because it wasn't safe. So it's a really good thing to be able to offer people a place of safety.
Yeah, I always remember the great Father Sean O'Leary preaching in Red Bluff years ago, and he was talking about this imaginary person who was living in Red Bluff and has been an immigrant, and he said all he knows is that he has to fight for a living, and he wants to work, and he wants to take care of his family and so on.
Yeah.
And he doesn't make distinctions between this part of the world and that part of the world, and so on. So it sort of ties in with what you're saying, that people have to try to do what they have to do to.
Yeah, I don't know any other reason why somebody would pack up their children and make this dangerous journey with them, and except that they're looking for a place to live where they can be safe.
And so when you had these people, refugees, resettlement, what would that typically how would that typically work if somebody is coming from, let's say, Iraq? You would have some connection with them in some way, and then greet them and meet them and at the airport, and how would...
Well, so there are 7 international organizations that take on refugees, and we were always associated with the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. So we were an affiliate of them, and so the contact would come through the bishop's office. And then they would assign refugees to different places in the country where there were services or where there were families. And we always resettled refugees here in Sacramento because they had family members here. And so we would receive them at the airport and work with their family to, find housing. And they come with nothing. They come with one little suitcase and a plastic bag that comes from the United Nations refugee organization. And they have to make a complete new start. They you know, from everything, basic necessities to language to school to, you know, job, everything. It's daunting for them. And that all is supposed to happen in the first 6 months that they're here, which is an ideal for sure. Doesn't always happen that way, but just to help them get settled and learn how to take the bus, learn how to, you know, do basic things, learn how to go to a grocery store, learn how to operate a dishwasher, things that we all take for granted, that they have to come and start all over from scratch.
And you even welcomed and got on his feet one of our prominent pastors now in the church from Rwanda.
Oh, Father Bernardine, yeah. Yeah, it wasn't him, but it was his sister who came, and that's how I made the connection with him. But yeah, he came from Rwanda and came from a large family, and they were all scattered. And some of them have landed now in the United States. So he now has some family here.
Yeah, because he always, when I see him, he always asks how you're doing, because he associates you with getting in and so on.
Yeah.
And that's a really success story. And it was interesting that he would go to the place in the mountains as a priest later on, where he encountered some racism. But the people around him, just the parishioners, just jumped in and welcomed him. And after that, and then he went to another place, and they welcomed him equally well. So he's a great blessing and success.
Yeah, it takes a while. It's different. You look at somebody, they look different, they have a different accent, but you know, underneath, we're all just people, and we're all children of God. So it takes a little while to get to that awareness, but when it happens, it's really nice. Yeah.
So then you did all that, working for the diocese and serving there with Bishop Soto and others, and then you got a sort of a new calling to work back into parish ministry, but in a different capacity, and working for St. Francis Parish with Liturgy. So that's been a few years now, right?
Yeah, I think it's going to be 4 years coming up. So yeah, that time has gone fast.
Yeah,
really, I loved the charity work, but I really was missing the rhythm of parish life. The rhythm of diocesan work, it's one speed, and that's fast. So I was really missing the liturgical seasons and just the rhythm of parish life. So the opportunity came up to be the director of liturgy at my home parish, and so I jumped at that chance, and been there ever since.
And of course, that's Midtown. It's a little bit like the cathedral. There's all sorts of people who come and go there, and there's challenges with the poor and people who have issues and so on. But I guess that's part of ministry, to welcome all people.
Yeah, it's a challenge. It gets to be a challenge. It's a great theory in the book. But it's a challenge to actually live it out. And we have certainly, over the years I've been at St. Francis, seen a big change in the Midtown area. Lots of people who are homeless, living on the street, and some of them live in our courtyard now.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that courtyard. It's a beautiful thing to do.
Well, people years ago slept on the actual steps of St. Francis. And it turned out to be not a safe environment there. That people would drive by after the bars closed at night and throw things at them and not treat them very well. So we worked with the Midtown Association and law enforcement and got permission to house them in our courtyard. So they're off the street, they're not visible, and it's a safer place for them. And so every night there's 16 people camped out on the patio there, and we give them a place to sleep and a breakfast in the morning, and then send them on their way. And
they're treated as guests with dignity and respect.
Yeah, we call them guests, and yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful, yeah. And then in regard to prayer itself, and I must be, I experienced it myself from one angle as the priest, in a way, in a sense, presiding and stuff, but you probably see it as putting the whole thing together and forming liturgies and things that go on during Mass, or somebody, gets sick, or somebody this or whatever, people coming in early, late, and the whole experience of prayer and song and scriptures and
Yeah, the
I
whole
know you have a
thing.
very elaborate way there of preparing the readers, the proclaimers of the word. They put a lot of emphasis on that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the Word of God, so it's important for the people to be able to hear the Word of God in a way that they can get whatever God is wanting to say to them out of those readings. So we have a schedule of readers, and if you're going to read on Sunday at Mass, you have to come on Monday night, and we spend an hour breaking open the Word, reading the readings and talking about them, and then practicing them. And then they come on the weekend and can proclaim that Word.
Mm-hmm. And I know that another practical thing that you've been trained to do there by the diocese and are signed by the diocese for certain situations is dealing with people who have annulments, marriage cases, places, things that didn't go right, and now they're having. So how does that work, and what would happen if John Doe comes in he wants to talk to somebody? Other people, I think, outside the parish are sent to you, but in any case, he comes in to talk to you, and he tells you his situation, and then what?
Well, people are, fortunately, the church now has a remedy for people who have been in marriages that never developed into the sacramental union that the church holds up as the ideal. And so now the church has a remedy for people in certain circumstances, not every circumstance, but many, where that marriage can be resolved in a way that will free them to marry in the church again. And so a person needs to have a final divorce decree, and they have to describe the marriage, what happened at the time of the marriage. The church is looking at what happened when they got married, so that whatever happened at the end to cause a breakup or a divorce, they're looking at what happened at the time of the marriage to see if there was something there that caused that, to see if there was some
inability, basically.
Inability,
a
lack
true
of
marriage.
Understanding. And sometimes people are in situations where there's a pregnancy and the parents wanted them to get married, and so there was some fear. So when people come to get married in the church, the first question they're asked is, have you come here without fear?
Force or fear, yeah.
Force or fear. And some people were married with force or fear. And so this offers them a chance to rectify that and get right with the church.
So, dear viewers, if for any reason you have any situations like that or know someone, again, don't be afraid. God is full of mercy and compassion, and the ministers whom you go to, like Beth or many others around the diocese, they're open to help you and to follow the church's teaching and procedures and so on. So don't be afraid. Good things can be done to help in every circumstance of our life to renew us and restore us in Christ. Now, we're not too far from the end of our show, so I was wondering, with all the experiences you've had in all these different fields and so on, this is a difficult time in the world. A lot of people don't believe in religion anymore or practice it or whatever it is. But I was just wondering, from your own experience, what word would you have for a person, young person, old person, any age person, in regard to the Lord and how can they come to God? And, there's no one size that fits all, but...
I see a lot of people who come because they have a child now and they want to baptize that child, or they have a child who needs to be confirmed, or they were never confirmed and now they're an adult and they're getting married, or they want to get married in the church. And I talk to a lot of people over the time, and I keep telling people, if you would just fit into the one box, that would be really helpful. But the truth is, there are as many boxes as there are people, and it's all different situations. And we just like to welcome people, and it doesn't matter if people have been away. It's never too late to come back.
That is a beautiful thing about the confirmation. I know you had a lot of people, and Bishop Soto did a lot of confirmations, make-up confirmations, whatever you want to call them, for people who didn't get it at the proper time, whatever that is.
Yeah. Yeah, so for a variety of reasons, people have just missed out on confirmation. And I had a group of, I don't know, there were 8 or 10 young adults. They were all young adults, and some of them were getting married and they hadn't been confirmed, so they had to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But some of them just knew they had missed one of the sacraments of initiation, and they wanted to complete. So it was just a lovely time of young people coming back.
Beautiful.
And yeah, it was nice.
And of course, another area, or 2 other areas that just want to touch on briefly that you're very involved in and very important for viewers, and hope you'll all feel, again, like Beth said, always welcome, the door is open. For instance, times of marriages can be great moments of peace, and also funerals. So
funerals, yes.
Those are times when...
Oh, it's always times, they're just all touchstone moments, all of those sacramental moments. And what we try to do is just, welcome people and give them, a real experience of God that they can take into the rest of their lives. And I think that happens. Mm-hmm. I think it really does happen.
Well, you were blessed to have wonderful parents, like you said at the beginning, and also you've been a wonderful parent yourself. So what would you, maybe to wrap up, words of encouragement, wisdom to parents? It's not easy nowadays, but don't always know what to do, and there's a lot of pressure in society.
Well, what I tell parents who come to baptize babies, I tell them that when a child is baptized, they have a right to be in church and to bring them to church so that they can develop that habit. So when times get difficult, they have a foundation that they can go back to. So I always just tell people, just, bring kids to church and let them, get the hang of it so that they have something to come back to if they've gone away.
Well, how beautiful that is. And I know, Beth, that you have reached out in so many situations to people with gentleness, kindness, humility, and always respecting the person and welcoming him or her, young or old, or whatever the situation may be, into the church, back into the arms of Christ. And so thank God for that, and thank you for sharing with us. And if you ever, viewers, wish to contact Beth, you can find her easily at St. Francis Catholic Church in Midtown. And so that brings us to the end of our little time together today. It went too fast, but a joy to be with you always. So now, thanks again. And viewers, delighted to be with you. And thank you for giving us some time today. Look forward to be with you again in the near future. And always be full of joy. Trust in God. Don't be afraid. And even though the church makes mistakes and has its weaknesses, there's a lot of good and beautiful things. And God is full of mercy and compassion for you and for every human being that has been created. So again, with a little prayer now. Lord God, we thank you for this day. Bless us and help us to serve you and to know you and to experience your salvation through Christ our Lord.
Thank you for watching Catholic Viewpoint, Faith, Hope, and Love. For more information on the Catholic way of life, please go to your local parish, where priests and other friendly staff are happy to serve you. Also, your diocesan website provides great information on parishes, programs, and much more. You can experience Catholicism on relevant radio at 1620 AM. And be sure to explore the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops website and EWTN programming. You may email us with questions or comments at catholicviewpoint@gmail.com. God bless your faith journey at whatever stage you are at this moment. Till next time, God's peace and joy be with you and all you love.